whether somebody's a solopreneur or whether somebody's Google, almost every business rises and falls on the quality of the relationships that they have.
I'm going to deliver some wow. So you're buying an opportunity to get their attention.
Guys like Cameron Harold, I invested 25 grand over a decade. Well, that turned into a 50x return on relationship in a few years. People are like, well, you bribed him. I'm like, no, I earned the right to ask for his attention.
What are the qualities in your gift giving strategy? What are the boxes you're trying to check?
That's the 7th step in the process. Client, the patriarch passed away, and the 3 kids blew through $5 million in inheritance fighting over one thing. What was it? He's like, it was a harmonica that the dad played every day after dinner for 40 years. You help do artifacts for people. You help create meaning and thoughtfulness.
3 weeks ago, a very good friend of mine died unexpectedly. The impact that John Ruhlin had on myself and anybody that knew him was profound. And I believe the impact that he will have on people moving forward will be the same and very widespread. Giving first and giving consistently was a life philosophy for John, but it was also his business. When asked what her father did for a living, he helped people love on other people, is what his 14-year-old daughter said at his funeral. I recorded this interview almost 3 years ago and never released it. The audio quality isn't as high as I'd like it to be. The interview isn't as long as I'd like it to be. I wish that I could do it again, but I can't. I hope you get just a fraction of the value from John Ruhlin that I have from listening to this.
Mr. John Ruhlin, how are you, sir?
I'm good, Brad. Thanks for having me, bro.
Dude, I'm always excited to get time with you. I do wish that it was in Austin instead of remote.
Me too. I wish we could. Somebody needs to come up with a studio that's in a sauna. Like to me, being able to, hang out with somebody I want to hang out with, learn from somebody I want to learn from, and sweat or do something at the same time, like that to me would be like, somebody's going to come up with that, a sauna studio. That should be like, buy that domain right now.
I think cold plunge hot tub studio is more likely. My devices are always locking up in the sauna. My phone is perpetually turning off. My iPad's dying. It's terrible.
Yeah, no, I know. It's, they came up with plasmas or LCDs that can be outside, right? In crazy weather. Like somebody's going to come up with a case that can handle the sauna or,
that's fair.
Extreme stuff. But yeah.
Well, that's our challenge for the next round is we'll do this in an adventurous environment. If anybody's up for it, it's me.
1,000%. Yeah, no doubt.
Ruhlin, we have known each other for 22 years, something like that. Crazy. I love it. It's actually one of my favorite things about life is the depth that comes with time with people and how you're able to shortcut and trust, I think, parts of the relationship just based on how well you know somebody or the character traits that you've seen over a long period of time. It's very cool to be able to watch you grow as a business person and as a human and adapt and see what you've done. So I'm always excited to talk to you. It's great to talk to you about shop here and get you in front of a bunch of great people. So I appreciate you taking the time, man.
Yeah, man. Well, it's the feeling's mutual. And the fun part is we didn't like each other for the first couple of years of knowing each other. We respected each other, but we were in very different parts of our life. So it's fun to see the people that I met early on in my career that either I was short-sighted or we were both had some maturing to do now are some of my closest friends. So this is one of those relationships where it's like, holy crap, man, a lot, what a cool evolution of a relationship.
100%. Yeah. I love that. So, you have, I think super interesting. I remember when you were writing Giftology and we were talking, you were polling your friends about working titles. What was the other possible title? Do you remember?
Yeah. Radical Generosity.
Yes. Did you say radical generosity? Yes. Yeah. It seems like Giftology worked out for you.
Yeah. I mean, our mutual friend Tucker told me I had a list of 40 names, and I wanted it to be something that was heartfelt and meaningful and deep and all these things. And Giftology was one of them. Radical generosity was the lead horse. And he's like, shut up. Don't talk about any of the other 39. It's Giftology. And he's like, I'm like, are you sure? He's like, we're using Giftology as a vernacular in our office. What's your Giftology plan? He's like, it's the only one that's on the list. Hands down, it's it. And I fought it for months and asked you and other people I respected, what do you think? And it was 50-50. Some people were like, no, it's Giftology. Some people, no, it's radical generosity. But no question, radical generosity sound now in hindsight, I still use the vernacular. I still use those words, but it would have came across as like a charity book or about giving to charity or a cause, which could be. That is radically generous, but the whole focus of our book was business gift. Like, how do you build relationships within business using love bombs or gifts or whatever else? And so it's funny looking back, like, dang, I'm so glad I didn't call it what I really wanted to call it and fought against tooth and nail. But Tucker was right.
Well, Tucker is often right. He is wicked smart, very sharp, also very hard to argue with when he's convicted.
He's got his 12 points. He's already thought 12 steps ahead. He's so I mean, it's the law background. It's just how he thinks. I think he's developed it also as a human. First time I met him, I didn't like him. I was like, that douchebag on stage, I would never work with. And then I end up hiring Scribe to write the damn book, with me. There's like this, I guess, track record of me being judgmental of people or whatever else. And I apologize to him. I was talking to him 6 months ago and I was like, dude, you evolved as a human. I think so have I. I'm sorry for being overly judgmental, and was almost ready to tear up as I was talking to him, because I was just like, man, he's just cool to see what he's up to now and how he's pouring into people and showing up differently. And still Tucker, but man, I think he's polished some edges too.
For sure. Well, so known you a long time, seen you go through a lot of stuff. For those that don't know, your Giftology is the vernacular that I like, that you have said before, and I think you said this to me really when we were mid-20s, was strategic gifting. And it's an explanation that I give when I'm trying to help people understand the point, right? And why gifting is important, or what Giftology is. Can you give both kind of a brief summary of that, and then also who you work with and how that plays into who you work with and who you want to be working with?
Yeah, so I think most people don't care about gifts. Most leaders aren't waking up doing their miracle morning at 4 a.m. saying, man, if I just had my gifting strategy together, my business would flourish. But whether somebody's a solopreneur or whether somebody's Google, almost every business rises and falls on the quality of the relationships that they have. It could be with their employees, their programmers, their dealers, their employees, their clients, their suppliers, mentors, investors. If you have quality relationships, you're going to get referrals. You're going to grow your revenue. You're going to have retention. All of these results. And so the core of what Giftology is if you show up in uncommon ways for your relationships, all of those things happen exponentially. And most people don't realize that when you give something to somebody, it's a representation of the value you place on the relationship. You would never take your best clients out to McDonald's. Why? That would be you'd basically say, I don't care about you. I'm taking you to the cheapest restaurant on the planet. You take somebody to the Four Seasons, or you take somebody to the Super Bowl. You don't take them to nosebleed seats. You do things in a way. People do experiences at this level 10, and they'll drop 10 grand on a relationship because they're important. And then they'll send that same relationship a $100 jacket, which they're not equal. They're not congruent. You're basically saying over here you matter, but over here I'm just going to check the box. You basically say, you weren't worth my time to do something physically thoughtful. And so the core of our business is, if relationships matter, then you need to have a process to scale your thoughtfulness. And we had clients, when they're doing this process with us, where they're loving on sending love bombs to their clients and centers of influence and people, and they might get a 3X on their Facebook ads, but if they do what we're talking about the right way over time, they could get a 100X return on relationship, ROR. And so that our agency is really a relationship agency that happens to use the gift as the delivery vehicle to can make that connection and make somebody say, damn, that person cares about me. And they're still telling the story 5 or 10 years later, which is where the referrals and the opportunities when you're not in the room. And so that's the core of Giftology, is that system and process.
Yeah, I love that. And so who's your market? Who are you working with?
I mean, I can name drop like the Cubs and the Spurs and like the fun, 9, 10 figure businesses, but the core of who we serve best are the Davids going against Goliath. It's the $5 million company going up against a $500 million company, or the $500 million company going up against a $500 billion or a $550 billion company. Really, it's not, I would say the YPO kind of companies. So that $5-10 million company to $500 million is our sweet spot, but it's all industries. Like when we spoke at Google, they're like, John, does this work? One of the guys was an engineer, like raised his hand. He's like, does this work in technology? Kind of challenging me. And I said, are there human beings here? And then he's like, well, yeah. And I said, well, then it works. It works with you have 80,000 employees or whether you have 8. So I like working with founders specifically because they understand relationships matter. It's their money and reputation on the line. And typically they holistically, if they have 20 employees, they know that each of those employees is worth X to the company now and over the next 10 years. And they know their top 50 clients by name, or they know like this person or this company is worth $1 million in net profit over the next 10 years or $50,000 in net profit. So I like working with the strategic founders, CEOs, leadership team. They spent this much on marketing. They spend this much on biz dev and hospitality and all these other things. And they're like, if we can redirect 20% towards this new way of building relationships and driving revenue, like, of course that makes sense because all of our competitors are having a pissing match over here with Facebook ads. Let's go at these people and do something way different. And so I love those kind of companies that are willing to, put their money where their mouth is, and they have the ability to make that decision like that.
Me personally, gifting is a huge part of my world. And it's a huge part of my world, not because I think that there's value in the gift itself, but so for me, one of my love languages is acts of service. And to me, a gift, I think there are very few people where the gift is actually the love language. I think most people, when they say that gifts their love language, it's really acts of service. It's really the act of service that went into the gift, it being thoughtful. If you get a shitty gift, it doesn't, even if it's expensive, it doesn't make most people feel good. It's like, okay, well, that was interesting. That was nice.
That was a miss. Yeah.
That was nice. Yeah. So that's been a through line for me for a very long time. And I think it's part of the reason that I value the approach so much. I also know that you can do it at basically any level, right? So you can have a very thoughtful gift that comes off as such, that's not breaking the bank, and you can do it as a solopreneur, that doesn't have much money. I also know that how you have operated over the years, there's been an era where you're helping people do one-off gifts, and certainly I send you annoying texts periodically saying, "Hey, what do you think I should get as a gift for this person?" But I also know that that's morphed over time. So who are you focused on right now? Like if somebody's listening and they want to say, "Is John the likely person to help me?" Who is that?
Yeah. So I would say somebody that has, like, we charge basically to have a giftologist kind of strategize and develop the program and then do the heavy lifting of picking the gift and drop shipping the gift and handwritten notes, all that kind of stuff that make it land the details you're talking about. We charge $20,000 a year for that service. So if you want to go hire your own giftologist or, generosity manager and pay 40 to 50 grand and in-house it, great. Like our process, you can go download our entire playbook, our blueprint, our recipe right now and get it for free, giftologysystem.com, and go get everything we take a client through. It's not hard. The strategy is not hard. The recipe is not hard. It's when you have to do something for 20 people or 50 people or 100 people. I would say if somebody doesn't have at least 20 relationships that are important, that could be employees, clients, partners, suppliers, dealers, mentors, whatever, investors, then they're probably not going to drop 20 grand just for our fee. And we don't have minimums. Like sometimes people do have 12 relationships that produce their $3 million in revenue, and they're very profitable. But in general, somebody's going to have at least 20 relationships that they want to take care of. They're going to invest 20 grand a year with us, plus whatever the cost of the gifts are. We'd call that at least another 20 to 100 grand. And people will push back and be like, John, my gifting budget last year was $3,000. I bought brownies at Christmas. And I'm like, that's true. But, one of my mentors, Cameron Harold, challenged a CEO who's a mutual client of ours. And he's like, Jason, you'll hire an extra 2 employees to your company. You'll add an extra $150,000 in overhead, and you'll make that decision in 5 minutes. No problem. You got to hire 2 more people. And then you'll want to think through for 12 months before you invest $150,000 into the 50 relationships that allow you to even have a company. It's the same $150,000. An entrepreneur feels really comfortable dropping $150,000 on Facebook ads or $150,000 on 2 extra employees. Why would you not invest the same $150,000 in the relationships that allow you to even have a company that got you to the dance? And so when we start to shift people's mindsets of like, oh crap, I do spend that much on dinners and travel or masterminds or coaching or whatever the numbers are, all of a sudden like $20,000 here and $50,000 there, like $70,000 to invest in your top people, like not a big number relative to their overall business. So I would say in general that 20 relationships, they have to be willing to invest, call it 30 to $100,000 to go pour into those relationships. There's anomalies there, but that's usually a starting point.
Got it. Cool. So, 2 things. One, if people can't identify 20 relationships that are important to them, I think they're delusional. They should probably think a little bit harder. Now, there is a question of putting a number on that, right? That's a different thing. But that leads me to point number 2, which is the entrepreneurs that you're talking about that are, whether quite honestly at any stage, but let's say our audience, right? People that are multi-million or multi-8-figure, 8-figure plus, 9-figure, whatever. Either way, they look at that number. And as you said, even if the cash is in the bank account, they look at that number and they look at it probably as, at a minimum, more subjective of a return than a Facebook ad or, your SEO play, which is still, a long tail play. So it opens the door for me, the question around what's the difference between sort of an acute gifting strategy where you're like, hey, I'm pursuing somebody and I think that this is part of the pursuit versus a systemic gifting strategy.
Yeah. I would say early on, because I was, goat milking farm kid from Ohio, where I started, like I didn't have any good connections. I couldn't afford a mastermind. I was trying to sell knives to go to med school. So, I had no relationship. So I went after a Jeffrey Gitomer and sent him 18 gifts in a row. And, to this day, we still do millions of dollars in the stupid knives. But for him, I sent, I sent him like $4,000 worth of knives over 18 months. Every month he got a different package because I wanted that relationship. And all that did was, people are like, well, you bribed him. I'm like, no, I earned the right to ask for his attention. I bought his attention. Didn't guarantee me the deal or the opportunity or the friendship or anything. I just earned the right to be able to say, like, I want some time with you. And I got the time. After 18 gifts, he was like, John, you're the most pleasantly persistent SOB that I've ever, he swears like a sailor. He's like, if you fly to Charlotte, I'll hang out with you for half a day and we'll see where it goes, but I'm not guaranteeing anything. So I flew down, built a relationship, and now he's a client and advocate, a raving fan. So there is that more Dream 100 prospecting. That's where most people want to reach out to us. And I'm like, 90% of what we do now for ourselves and for clients is warm market. Most people want to go after the cold market and go after that, and that's fine, but they don't have the grit, the tenacity, and the budget. They need to add a zero to. They're like, hey, what can you do for $1,000? I'm like, this is $1 million relationship for you, and you think $1,000 is going to blow this, a Gary Vaynerchuk away or a Tim Ferriss? Are you out of your mind? You need to be playing this over years and add a few zeros to that. Most people don't have that tenacity and that commitment to play the long game. But what they should be doing is taking that same $1,000 and investing in a relationship that already likes them and make them love them. Because that person really, if they're a client already, they're buying their own damn gift. We tell people to reinvest 5 to 15% of net profit. So if you made $1 million, that's 50 to 150 grand. To keep the relationship, to grow the relationship. And the secret sauce is, guys like Cameron Harold, I invested 25 grand over a decade. And the reason I did that, after I did the $7,000 in Brooks Brothers, I kept sending him gifts, even though I already had the relationship, because I wanted to inspire him to go advocate on my behalf. Well, that turned into a 50x return on relationship in a few years. Show me in your business where you get a 50x. Nobody other than relationships. So most people should take the people that are already in the boat and should pour gasoline on the fire that's small and make it big and get those people to go sell on their behalf. Because one referral, like if you could get all your clients to just send one referral per year or every 3 years, like most people would have more business than they could handle. And we've gotten to that point now where I won't have any one-on-one calls. I'm having group sales calls where people have to come in and engage because we have, I don't want to say too many referrals, but we have more than I can have one-on-one calls with, which is a great freaking problem to have. But that only happens not just because you have your paid salespeople. It's because you take all of your markets and all the people that like you, and now they're inspired to go open doors on your behalf because of how they feel about the relationship, not because you're given a commission or you're paying them. It's because they want to see you win. If all your relationships want to see you win and they view you as a giver, like the opportunities start to get pretty exciting.
You wanted to encourage Cameron to continue to promote you over time, to be a raving fan of yours over time. And so we have a partner program at Easy Pay Direct, and we pay people a percentage of what we make forever on the referrals that they send us. It's awesome, right?
Yeah.
And there are two things. One, the obvious reason for that is what you just said, which is that if we're paying them forever, you think that they consider sending us more business again? Right? For sure.
Yes, of course.
Two is we have, I routinely have these situations where it's unclear if somebody actually referred the business in or not. And so one of our salespeople or somebody on the team will be like, oh, well, they're loosely connected to John Ruhlin. Should we pay John as the referral partner on it? And I'm like, absolutely. We should pay John as the referral partner. And they're like, but you really want to pay him that? It's 20% currently of the revenue that we make. Do we really want to pay him that if we don't have to? And I'm like, absolutely. We want to pay him, because if we do that, it's that show of good faith, and it's that reminder that, oh man, this is a great relationship. And as long as all parties in a relationship are truly winning, it accelerates the flywheel, right? Yep. And if somebody doesn't feel like they're truly winning, then they just get out of the relationship, forget about it, prioritize something else.
Yeah. The relationship accelerator is for sure. I mean, and people are like, that's 20% is a lot. And it's like, what would what's marketing costs? What's sales commissions cost? Like, if you add up all of your fixed costs, the person's really not even on your payroll, and they're out there in 5 words from a Cameron Harold or 5 words from a Roland Frazier or a Tim Ferriss or an Aubrey Marcus or whoever the person is more powerful than 5,000 words from the best salesperson. And they're running in circles. It's what's beautiful about it is when you're not in the room at the mastermind and somebody out there is like, you got to work with this guy. And I've seen it happen in different forums where, like somebody's going to say, I hate Stripe, or I hate PayPal, or I hate whatever. Like, I'm getting screwed. Who do I need to work with? And your name starts popping up. Like, people are going out of their way in forums where you're not at, advocating for you, and you can't buy that kind of advertising. Like, that's what people don't understand. Like, all things being equal, like, am I going to pay the commission? Hell yeah, I'm going to pay the commission. Like, even if it's fuzzy, like, because people in the back of their head, they'll remember that. Like, Brad could have taken care of me and he didn't, or Brad really didn't have to and he did. Like, that just speaks volumes about who you are and how you show up. And even if you screw up, people give you the benefit of the doubt because they're like, Brad's a good guy. He's a generous guy. He takes care of people. We all mess up. And we want people to give us the benefit of the doubt when things hit the fan. Like, that's a perfect example.
It is. And, I think that that's true. And I had a conversation with a friend of mine the other day, Jason Fladlian, who is just a killer person, wicked smart, super good marketer, super sharp. And he said, how you show up is more important than what you say. And I thought, man, that is such a powerful sentiment. And I think it ties into what you're talking about, because it's not about buying your way in, and it's not about the money. It's about the effort and how you show up that communicates that you care. And you kick this off by saying that people don't think about giving gifts. They don't want gifts. What they want are the relationships, right? What they want is the value in the relationship. So I love that. And so you talked about kind of the acute gift giving, right? You said, hey, I grew up I love how you talk about yourself as a farm boy from Ohio. And these were acute approaches largely to try to get in the door, right? So the Jeffrey Gitomer was probably an attempt at an acute approach that ended up being a very long-term approach because you just kept doing it. Cameron Herold was very distinctly an acute approach. And do you have that story posted somewhere? Because I think it's a good one and people should check it out.
The Brooks Brothers one? Yeah. If you Google Brooks Brothers Cameron Herold, I think it shows up on multiple blogs, multiple stories. I think there's videos, there's all that. I mean, Cameron talks about it all the time. I talk about it all the time. It's like,
I know.
It's like to the point where somebody came up to Cameron like, "Oh my gosh, you're in giftology." And Cameron texts me, he's like, "Dude," he's like, "People think I'm famous because I'm in the book." He's like, "It's come like full circle." Because when I did it for him, like I was gonna have dinner with him and whatever else. I already had the relationship semi-established because I'd met him. A lot of times people are like, "Well, once you meet the person, that all like why would I do the gift?" And I'm like, you want to accelerate things. You want to deepen the relationship. You want people to take your phone call the second time, the third time. You want people to refer. That's very different. Like being able to meet somebody, cool, but it's like, are they willing to go out on a limb and open a door for you? Probably not. And so, yeah, the Brooks Brothers one at the time, the $7,000 might as well have been $7 million because I didn't have the money really to do it. I was scared as hell. And Rod, who just bought half the business of Giftology, thought I was insane. Like he's like, if it doesn't work, it's coming out of your personal draw. Which would have hurt really, 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 really bad.
Yeah. So, okay. So, I mean, I can't leave the loop open. So the long and the short of this story is that you met Cameron at an event. You pinned him down at the event and said, "Hey, I'm going to be in your city." You just tell it. I'm going to fuck it up.
Yeah. So it was at an EO event. I just joined EO, heard him speak, found out he was speaking to our chapter, and wanted to get time with him. So I invited him to dinner and a ball game thinking he'd be like, "Oh, this is cool." And it was the most underwhelming response ever. He's like, "I don't really care about basketball. I don't know who you are, but I'll grab dinner with you." You can tell like he didn't want to do it. He was just doing it because he was in the city at the same time. And so I found out they loved Brooks Brothers and had his whole Ritz-Carlton room outfitted in his size in the new fall collection, which was all the jackets, pants, suits, belts, shoes. It was like $7,000 of clothes all in his room. So when he got in, he didn't, because he was going to go shopping there. He didn't have to go shopping. He could pick out what he wanted, and he freaked out. I mean, you could tell like when he arrived at the Brooks or at the Ritz, he didn't want to go to dinner and a ball game. When he came back down, he was like, "Whatever you want to talk about for zone, you want to talk about." He's like, "I've never had anybody treat me this way." And I didn't ask for anything. We went to dinner and had a great night. But he started texting other authors to change the best customer experience stories. So he just started to go crazy. And I continued, and I built him like the full $10,000 Cutco set. I sent him the crazy $700 wine tool. Like I continued to drip on him and his family for the next 10 years, once a quarter. So it ended up being about $25,000 worth of stuff that I sent him that were all personalized to him. But it started with that $7K. And that was kind of the mini explosion that started the relationship.
That opens a really good question, which is, at what point do you make the ask? Right? So you've got this idea of, hey, you need to open the door with somebody. You want to open the door. And so this acute gift giving strategy is, I'm going to deliver some wow, also known as a love bomb, to this person and try to open the door and open conversation. So you're buying an opportunity to get their attention.
Yeah.
How much of that do you do before you make an ask? And where's the authenticity with it being a gift versus it being a bribe?
Well, I think if you don't have the relationship, you are kind of, like I said, buying their attention. Like Vaynerchuk talks about, he's an attention broker. Like you're brokering their attention by showing, because everybody says they have a good idea or they want to pick, like, hey, I'm going to save you money or all these different things when you're trying to get your foot in the door. But when you show with your time and with your money and you hit them with something that's significant, not hey, here's a sleeve of golf balls, but you're hitting them with a $500 or $5,000 love bomb, it shows that you're different because nobody does that, right? I mean, very few people are willing to step up and put their money where their mouth is. But I would say that similar to Gary's book, jab, 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 right hook, it's not jab, right hook. It's show up, show up, show up, give, give, give. Then you earn the right not to expect to get the deal. You earn the right to ask. And so most of the time, if you give 3-4 things internally, whether you're a person of faith or not, the way the world's wired is like reciprocity kicks in, right? Like you start to say like, damn, this person is I like them or I like her. They're cool. I enjoy their company. They're adding value. They keep hitting me with these things. Eventually, like, it comes out like, what the hell do you want? Like, or like there becomes a dialogue. But I do think that, if you're on a limited budget, you hit somebody with a love bomb, you can say like, hey, I'd like to show you, 5 minutes. I want to show you this, this, and this. But to me, over time, I've learned to play, everybody wants to say they're playing the long game. But most people's long game is days, not decades. And so anymore, if I do something acute, which is rare, I'm going to hit them and make them feel uncomfortable to have to ask me, like, I want to do something back versus me going in for the kill, too early. I think it's a position of strength to be able to do it and no strings attached, just let it lay. And then oftentimes people come back and are like, I was wondering when you're going to ask. And then you hit them again, and they're like, no ask. But I think at least 3 times if you want to, have an ask, I hit 3 before you do. It's kind of like with positive feedback and negative feedback, like give somebody, so many pieces of positive feedback before you hit them with the negative. I think that is my typical strategy. But anymore, if I want to get to you, I'm going to go find somebody like Hal that knows you and have them engage you versus going in directly, because it's always more powerful for somebody else to make the introduction and open the door. And so I do a lot of, chess playing where I'm like, I want to get to this person, and here's the 4 steps I need to get to that person. Might take me a year or 2, but to me, that's a stronger play than constantly going in cold.
I love that. One of my favorite moves in life relative to relationships is I'm with somebody and they're like, oh yeah, do you know John Ruhlin? And well, you're a bad example because I know you very, very well, but do you know, Bob? And I'm like, and they're trying to be helpful, right? They're like, oh, I could introduce you to Bob for XYZ thing. They're like, do you know Bob? And I'm like, I would love an introduction. And I do know Bob. I just don't know him that well. And another introduction from a third party that does know him well further endorses me, right? So I already know Bob, but this extra introduction goes a long way. And so I think that third party validation credibility, as you said with Cameron Harold, the words from, a powerful brand make a lot more impact than you would possibly imagine.
Yeah. I've had that happen accidentally, and now we're starting to more planned serendipity. We had the Giftology book go out, and we had the $300 version of the book. We have a $100 version, but we had it go to Robin Robbins, who has a mastermind. She got it over the course of a year from 3 different people that she respected. I didn't realize, but I comped it all 3 times. So she gets the book over the course of a year from 3 different people. She went from not knowing who John Ruhlin was to, we got to book him on the stage. We landed a $30,000 speaking gig immediately because it was like an echo chamber. It went from like, don't know who John Ruhlin is to all of a sudden like John Ruhlin's everywhere. And so it's your point of like being able to figure out how to get, somebody hears your name from 3 different people that they love and respect in conversations, all of a sudden like your perception of them raises significantly. And people don't understand the impact of that. And most people aren't sly enough to say, yeah, I'd love an introduction from that person, not knowing psychologically what is likely to happen when that happens.
No question about it.
Look, referrals are the single best lead source in business, period. It's third-party validation. It's a warm intro. It makes the sale easy. The problem is getting referrals can be a bitch. And that's because most people are terrible at asking for them. And I think most people are just really uncomfortable asking for them. So they come off as aggressive or needy or just completely desperate, which just feels gross. But what if you didn't have to ask? And what if you just got referrals? Before he died, John Ruhlin built a giftology course called Referrals Without Asking. And it's basically what they have been doing for years to help other businesses generate referrals on demand. But more important than on demand, systematically. It breaks down their 4 pillars of what they've been doing to make this whole system work. Myself and a handful of John's other really close friends are giving away the course for free. We want to see his work continue, and we want other people to be exposed to it. So whether you are a solopreneur, you have an 8 or 9 figure company, or you're a Fortune 100 exec, I highly recommend that you go grab the Giftology course, Referrals Without Asking. Right now, we're doing it for free. You will get a ton out of it. beyondamillion.com/RWA is where you can find the course, Referrals Without Asking. Again, that's beyondamillion.com/RWA. It will make a huge impact in your life.
Okay, so I would be remiss to not ask you the gifts that you give. What are the best things? Or I think even a better approach is, what are the qualities of in your gift giving strategy? What are the boxes you're trying to check?
In our process, people will think about the what more than like that's the 7th step in the process, is picking that. Most people, especially guys, are the worst. Like, we're visual. Like, we want to pick the cool, sexy gifts. We're like, I like that. Get me 10 of that or 100 of that. And what they don't realize, it's not that. It's like that it's the story, it's the thoughtfulness, it's the meaning, it's the note that goes with it, it's all that. But you still do need, like, you can't give like something from Things Remembered for $25 and think that like somebody's gonna be like, wow, this is the nicest bracelet I've ever gotten. Like like quality does matter. And so to me, like, we call them practical luxuries. Like, if you're going to give something in a category, it needs to be best in class in whatever that category is. So if you're going to give a watch and you give somebody like that's wearing a Rolex or a Breitling, and you give them like your really nice Seiko for $500, are they going to take your $5,000 watch off and put your $500 watch on? There's no way. Like, they're just not going to. So finding things that are best in class in the category. And if you can't afford a Rolex, when people are wearing Rolexes, go to a different category. Like, go to give a $100 luggage tag versus a $500 watch. $100 luggage tag is probably 100 times nicer than the one they currently have. And if it's brass and their name's engraved, their family name, their spouse, whatever else, like, now all of a sudden you have what we would deem an artifact, best in class artifact. So finding that practical. The other thing is, most people don't need more stuff in general. Like, during the pandemic, the line going to Goodwill was like off the charts. It was a mile long. Why? Because most people have too much crap. And so finding things that are practical, like, you don't need another thing to, a paperweight or something that's going to be on a desk or whatever else. Like, find something that's useful. It's why the knives work so well. Most people have the knife set that they got when they got married or whatever. They inherited it. It's like something from Bed Bath & Beyond. And you give somebody that has a $200 knife set, the entire 12-piece set, and you give them one knife that costs $250, now it's like, holy crap, I'll use this, like, whether it's once a day or once a week. And so finding the things that are actually like useful to that person versus like something that's just another thing. The other thing that I would say, almost 80% of the things that we do are including the inner circle. So like, for you, like, you can buy anything you want. Like, you like something, you go buy it. But I'm going to look and say, like, does Brad have an assistant that he cares about? Does Brad have like, Brad's not married, but maybe he has a significant other that's important to him. Like, the people around the people, most of the time when we're doing things at scale, we're like, are they married? Do they have kids? Do they have pets? And do they have employees, like a chief of staff or somebody that they care about? Because if I want to get to Brad and I know he likes, tequila, and I think I'm going to send him a Terramana bottle for $30, and he's drinking Clase Azul, like, it's hard to get something that he doesn't already have the best of. But taking care of his dog, or the professor that he loves, or taking care of his assistant, now all of a sudden, instead of spending $10,000, I can spend $1,000, and it's as if I spent $10,000. And so taking care of that inner circle is one of the things that we're always trying to tap into. And that's how you can spend less money than your competitors and actually have 100 times more impact, because you're coming in from a completely different angle.
I love that. That's great. One of the things that you said years ago is when you are gifting somebody, specifically when you're at an event with those people, you make sure to gift their spouse who's still at home, right?
Always.
And I think that's brilliant. I think that's super wise. My concern with this is that, and the other two things you said that I heard were best in class, and I love that. And used every day or used frequently, right? Something that's going to be in front of them, be around, and it's going to be useful. And you said inner circle. The question with the inner circle for me is, how do you know what they want? How do you know what they're going to use? How do you know what's good for them? Or do you just go back to the best in class and frequently used?
Well, I think the reason that we do so many things that are like we try to tie to humanity. So whether somebody lives in Idaho or Iowa or LA, like there's certain things that are common amongst humans. I mean, frankly, both of our history comes back from Cutco. I was looking for great ways to sell lots of Cutco. In hindsight, tying something to somebody's kitchen, whether somebody makes 50 grand a year or $5 million a year, they all have a kitchen. Their most valuable relationships you break bread with in your home. Every celebration has food and drink as a part of it. And so the reason we still do the crazy wine tools is if somebody likes to entertain and they drink wine of any sort, you give them a $700 wine tool. It's probably the nicest wine tool they've ever had. And that's pretty universal as long as somebody drinks. Knives, pretty universal. Like as long as somebody eats or entertains at their home, which whether they do that once a week or 3 times a day, like it's pretty common amongst humanity. And most people, they might have their Sub-Zero fridge for 10 grand or 20 grand or their Viking stove. Most people have not said, you know what, I really need to go drop 5 grand on a really high-end set of cutlery. And even if they have, when they look at that thing that's useful, and then they we did the knives for Tony Robbins for a client. Every knife, it was a $10,000 knife set. Every knife had a quote. All 40 pieces had a different quote on both sides. So it was 80 of Tony's quotes. So even though he may have had a nicer knife set, the fact that it was his legacy tied to these pieces, now it's an heirloom. Now his future grandkids are going to fight over it. You know, Roland Fraser, perfect example. Pete and I sent the gift to Roland. It was the knife set. And Roland's wife's never on any of the videos. She was on there like in tears. Why? Not because they drive a Rolls Royce or a Bentley. Like they could buy their own 100 knife sets. It was the fact that all of like Roland's quotes over like 30 years were carved into the blades that made it. So yes, it was a cool functional gift that I could send to 1,000 different people. But it was the attention to detail to say, this is what matters to Roland. It's like what he's spoken into existence is how he's helped tens of thousands of people. That's what gave it gravitas to make it say, out of all, like Gary had $10,000 in knives. All of those got pushed aside because there was no story. There was no sentimental meaning to them. Now all of a sudden, these are the tools. And every time they use those tools, like everybody wants to be top of mind to get more referrals. When you can anchor yourself into the most used room in the home, you know, for most people, it's the kitchen. That's the hub of the house. You want to get more referrals, you got to be top of mind. You want to be top of mind, you got to have a talk trigger. That becomes the talk trigger. So it's the thing, it's the personalization, it's the meaning, it's including the spouse. And so many people will say, John, I did giftology, it didn't work. They're not following the full recipe. They're cutting corners. They're sending the knife set without the sentimental meaning. Or they're sending it at Christmas when everybody else is getting 50 other gifts. They haven't dialed in all of the parts of the recipe to make it land with this like explosion that then ripples into the future. So it's not just the thing, it's all of the details around it.
That makes sense. And I love the talk trigger consideration. And that's sort of a combination. That's the product of a combination of things, right? Of it being front and center, i.e. being it something that gets used every day or on a routine basis. And also it being best in class, probably, and or you tying in some sentimental component that's relevant to their life in some way. And I don't know that you used the word just now, but one that you often use is artifact. And it being something that, tell me what that means to you.
Yeah, I think, if your house is on fire, like we just gave a gift to a client, or to a client's client, and it was one of the crazy, it's called an artifact mug. It's like a $2,000-$3,000 mug. People are like, why is it $2 or $3 grand? Like, it's a mug. I'm like, yeah, the clay is $20, but the reason it's $2 or $3 grand is the artist carves into this mug core values, faith, family, legacy, why, tragedy, overcome, all these different things. And this went to a celebrity, and we just got the video about an hour ago. And this guy's like, he literally said, he's like, if my house was on fire outside of my kids, this is the thing I would grab. He was in tears. He's like, I've never had anybody see me in the way that this like signified being seen. And that to me is an artifact. It's like, what are the things you grab in your house that are on, if your house is on fire? It's not the most expensive things. It's the things that have the most meaning. There's a tie to your history, your legacy, and so I hate the word gift because it feels like a fruit basket from Harry and David. An artifact is like, no, this is a part of who I am. This reminds me of what I care about, my legacy and my generations and whatever else. And so like a lot of people would be pictures. It might be a flag if your dad served in the military or mom, or it's something that has a lot of meaning. And so I love the word artifact of appreciation. I learned it really from Joey Coleman, who talked about like when he was a lawyer, he had a client, the patriarch passed away, and the 3 kids blew through $5 million in inheritance fighting over one thing. And I was like, was it art? And he's like, no, it was a $20 item. And he's like, I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't saw it myself. I said, well, what was it? He's like, it was a harmonica that the dad played every day after dinner for 40 years. And when the kids thought of their dad, that was the artifact. That was the thing that they thought of that reminded them of their dad, and they fought over that $20 piece because of the meaning, the story behind it. And he's like, I love your knives and I love your stuff. He's like, the reason I love Giftology and what you're talking about is like, you help do artifacts for people. You help create meaning and thoughtfulness. And he's like, whether it's the knife or the mug or the wine tool or the whatever, he's like, it's not just the thing, it's that meaning behind it. And so I learned the word artifact from him and started using it in replace of the word gift, because gift is like stuff. Artifact has meaning.
I love that. Okay. One more question, which is, how have things changed for you? How does your approach to running this business? So functionally, you have a very unique marketing agency, right? You help people market themselves, their brand, relationships, very differently than other people. How do you operate it differently today than you did when you were starting it?
Well, I mean, when I started, it was me just slinging blades, trying to like survive. And I had one assistant. Now, like, I don't get involved in day-to-day operations or those sorts of things. I sold half the business. I think early on I was insecure and felt like I had to appear bigger than I really was. Like now I love the fact that we're the small boutique business. We have 12 employees, but I make way more money off of working less than I ever did when I was the sole owner and, like trying to I call it the Ruhlin Group because it was just me and an assistant. Like I wanted to appear bigger. Now sure. I'm like, we're small. Like I'm not trying to be, but I think now like I'm realizing the power of building out this personal brand and platform. And it's allowed us to, because I have free time, we're starting to invest in other companies and do other things. And we're starting to get people that are attracted. And I have the bandwidth now to speak into other companies where we're getting ownership and advisory shares in companies based upon this platform that we built. And they know we're small, but they want to do the same thing that we did with the book or doors or stages or just getting advice on relationships and key strategies. And so I think early on, the first 10 years of business, like, I had no idea what I was doing. Like I was just throwing stuff at the wall. And I was really just trying to survive. And I think now, like I've gotten to a point now where I'm able to take a step back and let my team do their thing. And like we have giftologists. I'm not doing the strategy meetings or any of those sorts of things. I'm able to operate in my sweet spot and be really the ambassador for the brand and speak to it. And, but stay out of the things that like, A, I suck at, and B, I don't really want to do. And so I'm, after 22 years, like I'm in a fortunate position to be able to operate very differently than I started.
Yeah. Well, I heard two things, that stuck out. One was when you started, you were focused on selling a product. And today you're focused on building relationships. And the other was, when you started, in order to sell the product, you were doing lots of things, some of which you wanted to be doing and some of which you did not. And today you want to stay in your lane and you want to work on strategy and the things that are in your quote unquote zone of genius, and try not to worry about the rest, and trust other people will do the rest. Is that fair?
It's very fair. Yeah. It's a lot of trusting.
Well, that's a whole nother conversation. Awesome, man. Well, I'm looking forward to the next time getting some probably coffee or bourbon in the studio here, or
yes.
Trying out our sauna podcast episode. But until then, where can people find you if they want to check you out or check out your services or whatever?
Yeah, so they can email me directly. I'll forward it on to the team, but they can reach out directly, John@giftologygroup.com. That's my direct email. At John Ruhlin on Instagram is kind of like where we share kind of the behind the scenes and some of the crazy 50K artwork that we're doing for Vaynerchuk and some of these guys. But giftologygroup.com is the main website if somebody wants to see if they want to apply and see if they're a fit for kind of the done for you agency side of things.
It's awesome, man. I love it. Well, I appreciate you carving out time today. Always good to see you.
Thanks, brother.